seasons of being nap trapped, seasons of answering emails or DMs when you are feeding your baby at 1 a.m., seasons of staying up late and getting up early. But eventually all seasons end, and then there's a new season.
Welcome to the Business Edit Podcast, a podcast about redefining productivity for the modern woman in business and finding ways to work smarter, not harder, in business and life. I'm your host, Jade Boyd, an MBA, business minimalist, and productivity coach. I help overwhelmed business owners simplify and scale their service-based businesses by doing less but better. I help my clients create business minimalist strategies and systems that allow them to pursue ambitious goals while working at a human pace. On this podcast, we'll explore simple ways to grow your business with a life-first approach. If you're ready to scale your business, bring order to chaos, ditch the busy work, and spend more time living your life than managing your life, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Business Edit Podcast. Welcome to part 2 in this series of how 9 different women kept their kids at home while also growing their business. If you have not yet listened to part 1, scroll back a few episodes and make sure you go back to that episode first, because that tees up the idea behind how this episode came to be, why we're sharing this on the podcast, and also half of the stories, more than half of the stories actually, are in that first episode. And so you will not want to miss that first episode. Make sure you listen to that one before you come back to this one. But in this episode, we're going to go through 4 more stories of women who are in business, who ran their business for some period of time while their kids were at home full time with them, how they made it work, the best part about doing that, the most challenging part about doing that, and whether or not they regret it, if they would change anything, if they were able to go back to that period of time. So without further ado, let's dive into the first story.
So hi, my name is Kayla, and I am a mom of 2 girls. I have a 6-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old daughter. I'm a former elementary school teacher and a current photographer. So my business is called Kayla Kristen Photography. It's Kahla, a little bit of unique spelling. And I am located in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada. So here in Canada, you can take a 12-month mat leave, you can take an 18-month mat leave. And so when I had my first daughter, I decided that I would take an 18-month mat leave. During that time, my husband was relocated for his job. And so we moved across the province and to a city where I knew no one. I had no friends, no village, no family, and a little baby. And it kind of came time to start thinking about applying to new jobs and, getting my resume all fixed up. And I took all the steps. I got everything ready to go. And I got a phone call for an interview at a new school board. And I had just like this moment of clarity. So the interview actually fell on my daughter's first birthday. And I'm sure if I had said, hey, it's my daughter's very first birthday, can I reschedule this job interview? I'm sure they would have done it. However, for me, this just felt like this moment of clarity and this like sign that, hey, maybe I actually don't want to go back and basically raise other people's children while someone else is raising mine. And so my husband and I sat down together and we made the decision. We both felt very strongly about my staying home. And so we decided that, yeah, this was going to be what we did. And, my plan was to always go back to teaching. I spent 6 years teaching. I spent 5 years prior to that in university learning how to teach. This was my dream since I was 6 years old. And I just loved children. It was what I was really good at. However, once I became a mom, it felt very much like my priorities just shifted entirely. And all of a sudden, all of that love and care that I put into my students, I knew that it would be difficult to pour that into my students as well as my own daughter. So fast forward, I'm getting to the point where I'm going to apply and I'm like, I've been taking photos of friends and I've been taking photos of my daughter, and photography was always something I was passionate about. And I was like, hey, what if I just start my own business? And, I want this really new, nice camera. And what if I just like take some photos for people and pay for the camera? Like that would be kind of cool. And so it really was just sort of like this natural unfolding of my business being built. It really felt very organic. And so, yeah, long story short, here we are. My oldest is 6. So it's 5 years in this March. So I actually launched my business on my 30th birthday. And it was 1 month before my daughter turned 1. And it was just, I kind of chose that date because I thought this is a big, scary thing. And I kind of want to make sure that I stick with it And I feel like if I choose my birthday, that might be like a significant day that I'm not going to want to just throw in the towel easily. So here we are. I'm almost 6 years in and I still love it. So I've almost been owning my business for as long as I was teaching at this point. So, to talk a little bit about what our schedule looks like. Obviously, at the time, I only had one daughter, and I really did ease into my business. I was building this new business in a city where I knew nobody, I had no contacts, I had no friends, I had, like zero idea how to even run a business. And so I just sort of like brick by brick started laying the foundation, and I did what I thought I had to do, put myself out there on Instagram, offer sessions to new people that I met, getting my name just passed around out there. And so it really has been like a beautiful, slow building of my business. It never launched off in a way that felt overwhelming or like I couldn't catch my breath. There have been moments where I've been like, whoa, I need to slow down a little bit. But for the most part, it really has felt like, year one, year two, year three, it's just like this slow building. It felt very organic. It's felt very, very organic. So my husband is a shift worker. And so I started working during nap time and in the evenings, and he's home every weekend, fortunately. So I would work a lot on the weekends, and my schedule was dictated by his schedule. And so I could work when he was home. Otherwise, I would do my best to kind of fill in the gaps. So I was really getting pretty much, anywhere between 1 and 3 or maybe 4 hours a day to work on my business. And that really depended on whether or not my husband was home and, what kind of day my daughter was having. And how it goes with kids if they're sick or if something's up, if they didn't sleep all night and they just want to nurse and they just want to snuggle. And then the next day would be a day that I really didn't get much work done. Some days it was zero. And I would just be like, oh, I want to pick up my laptop, but this is important. And so luckily we had a almost 3-year age gap between the girls. So by the time my second daughter came along, I felt like I was starting to get more established in my business and I had a pretty good handle on all of my processes and, making sure that I knew sort of what I wanted to say yes to and what I wanted to say no to, because that was really challenging at the beginning, especially when you're new and you feel like you have to say yes to everything that comes your way. That was a hard lesson to basically be like, every yes that I say to business is a no that I say to my family. And the whole reason I started my business and decided to stay home was to raise my children. And so anytime I would feel my business start to kind of take over, and if I started to feel a little frustrated that I wasn't able to spend time on my work, I would kind of have to ground myself again and remind myself why I was doing this in the first place. And I will say I have come leaps and bounds from the beginning of my job until now, because at the beginning it was so easy to get frustrated. And now I take Fridays off. I mean, today was an exception. I did work today, but for the most part, every Friday I take off. Every Monday I work like a 9 to 5 because my husband is home. And so Mondays are like my crush the work day. But I've figured out a really good rhythm and I've become better at being at peace with recognizing when I need to close my laptop and when I need to focus on what's in front of me. So all this to say, working around my husband's schedule has been challenging, but I have figured out a good rhythm. For me, the best part about being able to build my business and be home with my girls has just really been like being there for every single first that my girls have experienced. Like I haven't really missed anything. And now that I have a daughter in full-time school, it's really cool that I get to attend the school functions. And I had envisioned doing that as a teacher at my daughter's school, but as it turns out, she's in French immersion and I'm not French. So there's just no way that that would have been a reality, in our lives now. But I had this vision when I had my kids that I wanted to be there like my mom was at the meetings and the dances and the hot lunch days. And that was what I wanted to do. So that has been the best part, just really being able to build my business around my personal life. I wholeheartedly believe, and again, I've come to this conclusion more so in the last few years, but I am a mom first and I'm a business owner second. And that is something that I don't know if I would have that same distinction if I was a teacher still, because it's a whole other ballgame. So that's been the best part, but definitely it's come with its challenges. I would say that I had to learn the hard way that some days were just not going to work out. I was not going to open my laptop. I was not going to get through my to-do list, whether I had a sick kid at home or I was tired or the baby didn't want to nap or, I had mom guilt because my kids were playing by themselves all day long. I found that really hard, and the guilt has been very hard. And then I remind myself, like, I could be away from them from 9 to 5 every day. So that guilt does not serve a purpose, and no mom should feel it. And yet we all do. But I have eventually gotten into a rhythm of working in small chunks. I pick up my laptop, I send off an email, and I check it off my list. I've gotten really good at to-do lists because that way I can handle those interruptions a lot better than I would have otherwise. At the beginning, it was really hard for me to get derailed. I would get very frustrated. And now it's just like, okay, I'm going to do this one quick thing and then I'm going to go read a story with my baby. And I actually like that because as someone who has like a really short attention span, I find that working in chunks, I actually am able to pour more into the task. And then I'm like, okay, I can take a break. So that's been challenging, but has actually been like a blessing in disguise. And I mean, at the end of the day, I have had just like the most wonderful clients. They are moms themselves. I specialize in newborns and motherhood and families. And every one of my clients has been or is in the stage of life that I'm at, or she will be. And so I think that they are just the perfect clients for me because they understand, like, hey, I've got a sick kiddo home today. I can still do our meeting, but she might be coming into the room and wanting snuggles. I hope that's okay with you. And I've never had a mom be like, oh, that's weird. Why is your daughter there? Like they have been amazing. So, I don't think I would do anything differently at this point. Like I'm really proud of the business I have built. It has been, as I said, like a, a very nice, slow build. And I feel like I'm at the point now where my kids need me a lot less. One's in school full time, the other is in preschool. And then my baby, she's my 3-year-old. She is so independent that when we're home, she's often content. Like if I set up painting at the dining room table beside me, she will paint and color and do stickers. And then she'll go play with her little dollhouse and she'll build with blocks. And she'll do that for an hour and a half while I'm getting work done. And then I'm like, okay, let's read a book together now. And then we have a snack. And then I'm like, okay, quiet time again. So I've been really blessed that she is so independent. My first was not like that. So I got a lot less done when she was younger. But, I think as moms, the longer we're in it, the more experience we get. And really, I've just had like an overwhelming sense of clarity the further I've gotten into my business and motherhood, of just like my priorities in life and the things that really matter. And my business is so important to me. It is like a third baby, but my kids are more important. And at the end of the day, that's why I've done all of this. And yeah, it's been a really awesome experience. And so, I mean, I feel really lucky that I decided to take this step because I think it was a very scary step to take. That said, I did know that I could always go back to teaching if I wanted to. At this point, I don't plan to. I think my business has become quite successful and it's not something that I would like to abandon, but who knows what the future holds. When my kids are full-time school and then off, it's hard to say what will come of my career. But yeah, this has been a wonderful experience. So I really hope that sharing my story has sort of resonated with someone, has kind of affirmed your choice to stay home and maybe work alongside your babies growing up. And I just think that getting to witness every milestone and every moment, the good and the bad, it is hard. It is a full-time job, but it's something that we will never regret. So yeah, I hope this has been really helpful.
My name is Emily Rushel, and I empower women through my Gather and Growth podcast, mastermind groups, and signature workshops. By fostering deep connections and meaningful conversations, I help women deeply know, love, and trust themselves as they design lives filled with purpose, joy, and fulfillment. We live on my husband's family farm in West Central Illinois, and my kids are 7.5, 5.5, and just turned 1. I have not always been an entrepreneur. I actually started as an elementary school teacher. And then at the time that my kids were little, was working in the nonprofit space. So we relied on full-time daycare during their early years. And when I moved to full-time entrepreneurship, my kids were in pre-K and daycare. And I kept them as such because I was really overwhelmed by the idea of trying to do both at the same time. I knew I needed to give myself space and capacity to figure it out. And so then that turned into them going to kindergarten and full-time pre-K. And so for many years at the beginning of my business, I had school-age kids and fit in my work while they were at school, which is something that worked really, really well for our family. I like having the distinction between family time and work time. And honestly, even in the early years of business where I was doing way too much, I held a pretty firm boundary around work time versus family time, which is actually different than what life had looked like even when I was working outside of the home. Now, a few years ago, a curveball was thrown my way and an unexpected pregnancy came into the mix. And that's when my life and business got turned upside down. I came into it thinking, oh my goodness, I'm so much more self aware than I've ever been before. Like, this pregnancy ain't going to slow me down. I'm going to know exactly what I need to do to feel my best. And LOL, I was very sick while I was pregnant, which really pushed me into a point of growth in my business of having to whittle down to what is the minimum to keep my business functioning and on the trajectory I want it to without doing too much or adding more to my plate. And so my pregnancy really set me up for a postpartum period where I was already moving in the direction of minimalism. Thanks to Jade. I was working with her at the time of being pregnant and immediately postpartum. And then, just as soon as I thought that I had that figured out, I had a 2-month-old and had felt really good about what I was going to be able to do in my business with my daughter at home with me. Our house flooded. 38,000 gallons of water went through our house. And so it really pushed me to walk the walk and talk the talk. And so for me, over the course of this year, my daughter just turned 1. I have had to get really intentional with how I'm spending my time and who I am bringing in to our mix to be able to make this successful. I know that I do not do my best work when my kids are at home with me. It is, in my opinion, one of the hardest things to do and something that leaves me feeling completely not enough in all areas. If I'm trying to work and be attentive to my kids or my baby, I feel like I'm not serving them the way I want to. I'm not showing up with my full attention or devotion. And it is taking me 100 times longer to do my work. And my brain is just constantly trying to do everything at the same time, which leaves me feel like I'm never doing enough or being enough in either area. And so I don't know if this is the advice that you're looking for, but what works really well for me and our family is, how am I getting support in childcare so that I can have my focused work time so that I'm able to show up in other ways? And so sometimes that looks like spending 1 day a week with grandma. We also have utilized babysitters who come to a house during the day, certain days a week for a certain period of time, so I can have focused work time. A lot of the work that I really love doing and that I'm exceptional at happens on calls, which is hard to take with a toddler running around. And so I, align my childcare time with when I need to be focused on that. And then also with the back end type things in my business that are also really hard to do with a baby on my lap. And so that gives me the ebb and flow to be able to be present in the times that I want to be with her. I do still have a lot of time with my baby at home with me while the big kids are at school where I'm not working. But carving out the dedicated space helps me have the capacity to know where I want to show up, how I want to show up, and to do that to the full extent in the given time that I have. So just from a really tactical standpoint, my daughter typically, or even during the summer, I guess I can elaborate on that. My kids go to my mother-in-law's during the day on Mondays. They're with my mom during the day on Fridays. And then we utilize other types of childcare, perhaps on chunks of the day on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I think I could illuminate several moments where I, in really good ways and in really hard ways, was trying to do both in the early years of my youngest life. I knew we were not interested in sending her to daycare when she was really young. That's not something we really wanted to approach until 5 or 6 months or so. And so I have a lot of gratitude for what it was like to have a little tiny baby on me while also trying to take calls or being able to write emails or create content. But I can also look back and see the times that I was massively overwhelmed by trying to do that. And it wasn't necessarily in alignment. Would I change it? No, it was 1000% the heart that I chose. But it, for me, was never meant to be a forever solution. So the cool thing about being a business owner is you get to design what that looks like. And many things can be hard. And so it's a matter of what is the hard that you choose that makes the most sense for your family in the season that you're in. The best part about being a business owner and having my daughter or even my kids home with me, when they're homesick or they don't have school on a certain day, is that I have the kind of job that allows me to be present. And so maybe it's rearranging my work day maybe it's changing my expectations for the week, but I do get to do both in a way that I would not be able to if I was still working outside of the home. That is definitely the best part. The most challenging thing about being a business owner with kids home with me is that constant feeling like I'm not doing enough in either category, and having divided attention and getting frustrated with my kids because I'm trying to do my work, or getting frustrated that I'm losing my train of thought with my work while I'm also trying to focus on my kids. And so that's why it really works well for me to have divine parameters around family time versus work time. And sure, there is sometimes where that bleeds through. I'm working on something in the evening that I needed to get done. That honestly rarely happens. Or there's time that, like I said, a kid's sick, plans change, babysitter cancels, grandma can't watch, and I'm rearranging my workday to accommodate. And I do not take for granted what a gift it is to be in a situation that I have that choice. Looking back, would I do anything differently? I look back to when my oldest was a baby and I was working full time, and that was the only choice I felt like I had. And we had so many struggles with daycare. There is just very few daycare options in my area, much less ones that we felt like we aligned with. And there were so many circumstances where someone would stop doing daycare, or they decided they didn't want to take babies. So we had to move both of our kids. Like, I think my son was in the hands of like 13 different people before he ever went to preschool. Some of those family, many of those friends, but still, it was a lot. And I look back on that season and think everything would have been different if I had the business that I have now, if I had the financial means to hire help in home like I do now for my youngest. But that wasn't the part of the journey that I'm on. And so it's a piece of our story. And I didn't have then what I have now, or know then what I know now. When I look back to the past year and a half of my life, I would not change anything that I actually had control over. Like, we got thrown some curveballs like a house flood that for sure changed the way that I was able to run my business and parent at the same time. But I really am proud for the way that we handled those situations and the capacity that I had to show up in the ways that I needed to in my business and as a mom. And the most important lesson that I've learned in this area is that everything has a season. And in fact, this year I have had financially the most success in my business that I ever had before, but it has required me to approach my business differently and make new choices and try new things and step outside my comfort zone and raise my prices and serve people differently, which in the long run has been really good for me and my business and my clients. There have been other things, projects, ideas, initiatives that theoretically I would have loved to bring to life this year, but could tell in real time, this is not the time for it. There will be another season for it, and I look forward to that.
Hey there, my name is Dolly DeLong. I am the business owner of two different types of businesses. I own a family photography business based in Middle Tennessee called Dolly DeLong Photography, where I serve families. And I also have another side of my business called Dolly DeLong Education, and that's where I run systems and workflow education. And I have a podcast called the Systems of Workflow Magic Podcast. I have a YouTube channel, and it's all dedicated to helping small business owners who are running the show on their own, essentially to teach them about the importance of systems, workflows, SOPs, and operations, and how to operate the back end of their business one system at a time. And in the last 2 years, that has emerged into me being a launch strategist. So I teach a lot of launch strategies as well to small business owners. So that's a little bit about myself. And I am also a mom of two boys. So ages soon to be 6 and soon to be 2. And how I was able to keep my kids home while running my business. So, in full disclosure, I used to work in higher education before having kids. And even when I was pregnant with my firstborn, and he's 6, so this was like 6 years ago when I was pregnant with him, I had this grand plan that I would continue to work in higher education because in my mind, I had a very cushy job, everything like, benefits, everything. I was comfortable. I was very comfortable. And even though I had a business at the time, a side business, it wasn't consistent with the income like most businesses are, beginner businesses are. So that terrified me. So I wanted my consistent paycheck. So I had a plan, and with my husband, we were like, okay, I will ask my boss at the time to see if I could work part time and still work, like, still do the mom thing, but then still do the 9 to 5 somehow and get that consistent paycheck. And I was the only one in my department who did what I did. All right. So it's not like another person did what I did. And so I was very confident that I would continue my job. Plus I had been working there for 8 years and I had built some good relationships. I was really good at what I did. And so when I had told my boss that I was pregnant and what I would like to do, my vision, I'd shared with him, and my husband knew the meeting going in. Like, he helped me practice and everything. My boss said it sounded like a great idea. And then he, in turn, sent out not a company wide, but a department wide email saying that I was leaving. So there's that. So I was actually in 2018 kind of forced into making a decision like, I'm not going to have a job in a few months and I'm about to have a baby. And so do I open up my business full time, or do I just stay at home? And I wanted to do both because I love working. I love working, but I also have always wanted to be a mom. I love being a mom. I love being a stay-at-home mom, and that has been, I feel like I am admitting this, like, I have so many different layers of my dreams, and it's really good to hear other people admit like they also want to be a mom and a stay-at-home mom and also work, and like they have the drive to do both. So that's where I am in life. So in 2018, I was definitely facing that, and that forced me to open up my business full time, which was at the time photography. What I didn't mention was I had been doing photography as a side business ever since 2008, but it was totally on the side. And then from 2008 to 2018, my income from photography was starting to match my income from my full-time job. And so I jumped into my business full-time. So I had birthed 2 babies in 2018, my full-time business, and then my real baby, the most important baby, my son. And so that is kind of how I started my entrepreneurial journey. And I feel like I just jumped into the deep end, and I had a lot of unrealistic expectations. Like, I thought, oh, I can work when the baby sleeps and I can sleep train him and I can do XYZ. I just had all of these unrealistic expectations. And also, looking back on my brain in 2018, I was in panic mode because I didn't know how to run a business and I wanted to create income, and I didn't have like that foundation, a good business foundation. I was literally learning on the go. I didn't know how to manage the money in my business. I really did not know what I was doing. It was all out of fear because I was thrown into like, hey, you're not coming back to work for us. This is your last day at your full-time job, and you're about to start a family. And so it was very scary. Thankfully, I know this. My husband and I were financially fine. We had just become debt free. My husband is very smart and savvy with money, very wise with money. So we were going to be fine. So I don't want to paint the picture like we were going to be destitute. But I am I really like a plan. I really like a good foundation. So starting in 2018, I knew I had to start learning about running a business. And then at the same time, I was also learning how to be a mom. And so it was a giant struggle, like daily inner battle for me, because on one hand, I was so excited about being a mom. I wanted to go all in. And on the other hand, I also wanted to go all in on running a business successfully. And you can do both. I believe that, but you can't do both like 100% mentally all the time. Like you will burn out. And I was burning out really quickly, sometimes to a point of where I would prioritize my business over my son. Like I would want him to nap longer, or like I would get irritated if I needed to do something with him. And it got to a point where it's very like, I'm being so open and honest. Like looking back on the beginning years of my business, I did not prioritize like enjoying the newborn stage, enjoying being a mother. And so there was a lot of days and a lot of hard conversations my husband had with me. He was like, Dolly, where are your priorities? Is it with your business? Because I support you in your business, but like our son, who is a human, comes first. And I did not necessarily want to send him to daycare. One, it's so expensive. It is so expensive. I might as well like give over my entire like check, whatever I receive from my business, over to daycare and not receive any other profit. Like that's how expensive it is. And so we found a happy medium, and we hired a babysitter to come in and watch my son at least once a week, so I can like develop some sort of cadence and schedule for myself. And so I started working in my business. I did the nap time hustle, but then I also knew I needed a little bit more breathing time. And so I had to create schedules for my work. And then when I was going to work, when the babysitter came to the house, and that ended up being like 15 to 20 hours a week. And it wasn't like big chunks, like 3 or 4 hours. It was up to 2 hours a day, like in the morning, in the evening. So I worked very odd hours, but I found a rhythm. And then I realized, like, when my son was about 2 or 3, like, it took me a while to get used to this rhythm. So I'm not going to paint it like, oh, in a month I figured it out, because for any of you with kids, you'll discover that kids are, especially in the newborn stage, like they change every month. There are milestones, like they drop their nap, they meet new growth spurts. And so my schedule was changing based off of my son's milestones. And so I worked around that. And so if I could go back, I wish I could just tell myself to enjoy those milestones, because I did not. I just wanted to have consistency. And that was so agitating to me that I didn't have consistency. But things changed for me when my husband and I had our second, and I knew then, like, I had been deep in prayer, and I had asked God, please God, like, help me to enjoy my time with my second, because the things of this world, like, I could gain everything, but I have very fleeting time with my sons. And also with a relationship with my husband is the most important, and a relationship with my sons is more important than earning an income. Yes, earning an income for the business, to run the business, it's important, but is it the ultimate? No. My ultimate is, well, one, to honor God, and two, like, to enjoy the blessings that he has given me. And that blessings for me are a marriage that is healthy, and 2 boys that are healthy, and they need a mom. So my second was born in 2022, and that was a completely different story from my firstborn. I enjoyed every milestone. Yes, like I was still doing the nap time hustle. I was actually more involved with my businesses than ever before, but I had to relinquish that control of needing a definite schedule. And it took a lot of prayer. And I did still end up working like 2, maybe 3 hours a day during that first year of my second son's life. And then we were still having a sitter come once a week. So I got a lot of my work done during the days she would come over and watch the boys. So I don't want to make it sound like it's all glamorous and easy. It's not. Like, you really have to take a hard look at your priorities. You have to take a hard look at, okay, like, what can you do right now? What are the tasks that need to be done versus like, what do you wish could be done? I had to finish the tasks that needed to be done to run my business, to be sustainable. And I am actually like, I have more time now because my firstborn just started kindergarten. So he's in school 5 days a week. And then my second son is about to turn 2. And we found a Mother's Day Out program for him to go to 2 days a week through our church. And so he goes twice a week. And so I work during the times that both boys are gone. That's when I work. And I have more time. It's not like 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week, but I have a more consistent schedule. And is it hard? Yes, because I have a lot of goals. I have a lot of dreams for my business. I love working. I love what I do, but I want to enjoy the blessings that God has given me. And I firmly believe that I will be given more time in the future as my sons grow up and they become a little bit more independent and they're like either in school full time or they're going to be doing other activities. I'll find more time doing work in that area. And then another thing that has helped me out too is just honing in on my money making areas of my business. And I have been able to just focus in on that versus being so scattered and throwing spaghetti at the wall and saying, okay, I think I can make money this way. Like, I know what my money making revenue streams are. And so I focus on like 3 different money making streams for my businesses. And I just have systems set up for myself. Again, this has been like trial and error through the years, but the biggest factor of me being able to be a stay-at-home mom and operate my business, like, 1, having help at least once a week and factoring that into the home budget. 2, knowing that my schedule is going to be shifting and changing based on, like, when I had babies, like, based on their schedules, and being okay with that and relinquishing that control over and still enjoying them and not being mean in my head, like, why are you doing this to me? Like, they're not against me. Like, they're kids. They're like helpless. They need me. So relinquishing that control. And then 3, being okay with taking like literal baby steps in my business of growth. And when I relinquish that control, I have more peace, and I still have that drive in me, but I have a little bit more peace in me. So I hope this is helpful, encouraging to someone. I know it's not a well buttoned up answer. It's constantly evolving, constantly changing, but I wouldn't change it for anything. I would definitely, if my husband and I like had an unlimited supply of money and we were able to send our kids to daycare, I wouldn't do it. I would not. I'm so glad that my oldest had that time at home with me, and because we built a really strong foundation for him and we had that ability to, I don't know, I feel like he was really ready for kindergarten because my husband and I poured so much into him at home, academically and just like socially. And then that's what we're doing for our youngest as well. So no, I probably wouldn't change anything. Maybe hiring a sitter for 1 extra day. I don't know. But I just am happy with what God has been teaching me so far. I wish I I wish I was less stubborn so that I could have learned those lessons early on. But thankfully, I'm so thankful for God's grace in my life. And I'm thankful He's gifted me with these children. I'm thankful He's gifted me with a passion and a zest for my businesses. And I relinquish it over to Him, and I pray that He can continue to guide me as my business grows and as my love for my family grows. So I hope this was encouraging to someone. Thanks for listening.
Hello, my name is Kate, and I am a podcaster, speaker, soon to be author, and online business coach. I live in Arizona for now, but we are actually moving to Idaho in the new year. So in the next 6-ish months or so. And I have 2 little boys, Luke, who is going to be 4 in December, and Jackson, who is 2.5. I have been an entrepreneur for about 7 years and a mom for almost 4. And to say that that was a transition is like the understatement of the year. But I knew when I started my business that I wanted to be at home with my kids, but also provide financially for my family. So it was a lot of trial and error to see what it was going to look like for us. And honestly, it sometimes still is because my kiddos are still pretty young. At first, it looked like only working during nap times and after my kids went to bed. Sometimes, if my husband didn't have to work because his schedule is kind of wonky, he would take over for a couple of hours and I would lock myself in my office and just get as much done as I possibly could. And it was, like I said, a transition because I was used to, being able to sit down at my desk and work for however long and work on whatever projects I wanted to work on. But when you become a mom and your time is so much more limited, especially if you decide to have your kids at home with you, it's just a lot more different. It's a lot more pockets in your day kind of work and that kind of schedule. At least it was for me. And then when I was pregnant with my second, we actually got a gym membership that had childcare 2.5 hours a day. And that was like our first, like, I guess, consistent childcare option that we had. And so I started utilizing that to number one, like get a quick workout in, but then I would get like an hour and a half to 2 hours of a work block in, which was super helpful, especially on the days that my kids wouldn't sleep. They wouldn't nap, if you know, you know. And so it was just super helpful to have that as like a backup, but also kind of extend even my work time. Let's say that we went to the gym in the morning. It's really great for the kids because they're able to play and do all the different things. They have a bunch of activities, all that kind of stuff. And then we'd go home, have lunch, and then they would take a nap. And so during kind of those 2 blocks, I was able to get, sometimes 2 to 4 to 4.5 hours of work between the 2 of them. And that was really beneficial at that time and something that, we just got a little bit creative with. And then earlier this year in 2024, we actually hired our date night babysitter to help out 2 to 3 mornings a week. So she was helping from like 9 a.m. to noon, sometimes 8 a.m. to noon, 2 to 3 days a week. And that was really, really great, especially as my oldest stopped taking a nap. And I was able to kind of block that time for calls or podcast recordings or whatever that looked like. And then in July of this year, we started putting our kids in part-time preschool. And so now they go to preschool 4 days a week. And honestly, it has been such a blessing for all of us. The boys love it. They love all of their friends. They love their teachers. They are absolutely thriving in it. And not only am I able to get solid, like predictable work time in, but my husband and I actually use Mondays, which ironically is today that I'm recording this. He has Mondays off every week. And so we use Mondays as like our day date days because he's off on Mondays. So we're able to like get lunch together and then we actually go grocery shopping together, which is especially nice because that feels like a luxury when you have toddlers, right? Grocery shopping with toddlers is a whole different kind of adventure. So that's really nice for all of us because, now my husband and I are also getting that intentional time. He is also getting his master's degree right now. And so it's funny because when the boys started going to preschool, I was able to stop working after they go to bed because that was, you know, like I said, a lot of my schedule was working during nap time and working after the boys went to bed. And then when they went and started going to preschool, I was able to stop doing that. So my husband and I kind of got back that time together. And now he's in his master's program. And so he has to do schoolwork a lot of the times after bedtime and all that good stuff. So it's nice to be able to utilize childcare for also not just work, but appointments or dates or grocery shopping solo. So it's been really nice to kind of be in this season. And it's just, totally different from where we were, 2 years ago, even. So the best part about keeping my kids at home with me, honestly, it was and has just been a dream come true. I was a teacher before I was an entrepreneur, and I were still teaching. I would likely only see my kids about 3 hours a day during the week. And now I get to see them like 8 to 10 hours a day on my work days, depending how early they wake up, because I got blessed with early risers. My mom jokes that it's karma because I was an early riser. So they're just, it's just payback. But I also get to pursue and fulfill my calling within entrepreneurship, which is to encourage and empower other women to create a life that they love, because frankly, life is too short to do anything other than that. Having the flexibility of being able to do both and being able to, have that time with my kids, but also pursue the things that I love and what I think I am meant to do has been incredible. Obviously, there have been lots of challenging parts as well. I think the most challenging part for me was the unpredictability. It's easier now that we do have consistent childcare through preschool, but those first like 3.5 years of juggling both motherhood and business was really tough, like in terms of scheduling. Like you're, working in the pockets of your day. Even when we had our babysitter, like, sometimes she would not be able to make it last minute. And I had calls booked that day. So it's just like a lot to juggle. Sometimes the kids nap, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're on a call with you. Sometimes you're, on your batching game with content. And then other times you're, recording your podcast late after bedtime in your closet. There's just a lot of unpredictability with it. And I think that was the most difficult for me. With them in preschool now, 4 days a week, I feel like I'm able to compartmentalize work and life and really separate it a lot more. I'm able to, with work, like be all in with work during my work time. And then when my kids are home and it's like mom time, I'm all in and present with mom time. And I feel like when I was kind of juggling and had, I don't know, all the balls in the air kind of thing and working the pockets of my day and trying to make it work during nap time and after the kids went to bed, it was really hard to not let work bleed into mom life and then mom life bleed into work. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I think that it can be a hard thing and that it now feels more manageable because I'm able to be a lot more present in what I am doing when it's more separated, if that makes sense. But I also think that while that's challenging and while there are challenging aspects to it, I think it's really rad that we live in a time where it's possible for women to do both and do both well. And while you might not be able to get as much done as maybe you once were able to before you had kids, and some things might have to be put aside for a season, I think motherhood actually makes us better business owners because we start to realize really quickly what is a priority and what things aren't. Looking back, I honestly wouldn't have changed a thing. I made a huge pivot in 2022 where I actually burned my whole first business to the ground and I started from scratch because that first business, while very successful, was like out of alignment with my life after I became a mom. And I burnt down that business and started my new business, which is what you see today, at 6 months pregnant with a 17-month-old on my hip and no childcare. And truthfully, it was, while some people would say like the worst time to start a business and like start over and make a pivot, it was the best thing that I could have done. There was no walk in the park by any means. And I'm still learning every single day, but we're out here doing the dang thing. I think that if there was one thing I could say to myself back then, or to any mom who is in the thick of it, trying to figure it all out and trying to figure out how all the puzzle pieces fit together, I would just encourage her, you, myself back then to remember that every season is just that, a season. seasons of being nap trapped, seasons of answering emails or DMs when you are feeding your baby at 1 a.m., seasons of staying up late and getting up early. But eventually all seasons end, and then there's a new season. It's corny and cheesy, but it really does go by so fast. And if you're in the thick of it, I just hope that you know how seen and valued you are. Whatever decision you make when it comes to keeping your kids at home or not, and utilizing childcare, or if it's a blend of both, you are such a good mom and you know what is best for you and your family. You're doing a really great job, and I'm rooting for you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Edit podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd be so grateful if you take a screenshot and share it on Instagram, tagging me at jadeboyd.co. I'm on a mission to empower a new generation of women to become the types of wives, moms, and business owners that they've always wanted to be. Because empowered women change their families and communities for the better, and this is how we'll change the world. Sharing your takeaways from this episode on Instagram will help more women in business discover helpful episodes and level up in life and business each week. Don't forget to check out the show notes for the tools and resources mentioned in today's episode, because good ideas don't grow businesses. Action does. I'll see you next time on the Business Edit podcast.